All right, welcome back. I'm glad you're here, and I want to share with you some of the things I've learned and types of legs that can be incorporated in tables. I mean, this is what a very basic table would look like. Now, this would probably be the first kind of thing you'd build, and you'd feel pretty good about it, right? And then a few years down the road, you'd look back and you go, what was I thinking? But this is a good kind of decent table. It's something that looks like you could throw it together, but this is actually mortise and tenon. But the thing I want you to notice is the legs are 1 3/4 square, and they're just dead square all the way down. We have a generous 1.5 inch overhang on the sides. And this table is 27 inches high and 18 by 18. We have a drawing of this if you're interested, but this is a good kind of beginner table. But you notice it's very straight, blocky, kind of heavy for a small table. Now, this same table, you can take the exact same leg. Well, it's almost the same. It's a little shorter. I got this from upstairs. I thought it was the same. Doesn't matter. Just pretend, okay? And you got your square leg, and all I do to make a nice shakery or federal style table is taper off the inside surface beneath the mortise. So just the inside edge. And it gives you a large change, like a pretty strong effect of you go from square to this light, refined taper that lands on the floor just more gracefully. You know, it's lighter on its feet than this clunky, blocky leg. Now here's the exact same table, same dimensions and everything, and we've got a tapered leg. So it's a nice straight leg. It's easy to make, but it has an elegance and refinement to it for not a lot of labor. You get a great kind of return on it. It's a classic federal or shaker style period. But what I love about this table is how graceful the leg comes down. It goes from an 1 3/8 square to a 5/8 inch square foot. And then the top, notice that too. Once you taper the foot, you really need to lighten up. You really need to lighten up. You really need to lighten up the top as well. This is a 3/4 inch thick top, and you can see what a difference it makes. This one's just got a simple undercut bevel, and the edge revealed now is only about 7/16, so it's less than a 1/2 inch. But the way that relates to the lightness of the foot, the whole thing feels like a sweet composition that feels right altogether. So those little things you do to the leg, it has to kind of incorporate and relate to the table as a whole. So when you're thinking about the leg design you might choose for a project, you think about the overall feel you're going to get from your table and make your choice that way. What I want to do is show you a variety of legs and go through them a little bit. This is not exhaustive by any means, but early on, once you got past the blocky legs in history, a lot of pilgrim furniture in the 1600s was very heavy. A lot of it was oak, white oak that was blocky, square, and they did a lot of relief carving and chip carving and a lot of mortise and tenons, really bulky material. And then they also started getting into a little bit of turning later in that century where they would use the spring pole lathes and things. And so you started to see in the colonial period too these kind of turned legs. Now this is a walnut, a piece of walnut. And this is just a classical table leg that once you know how to turn, this is not a complex piece, and it has this large block at the foot because there would be a heavy lower stretcher here. And this table, I'm almost certain the stretchers just went across the ends so you could sit comfortably along the sides without it interfering. So then we have another example of a turn column, and this is poplar. This was a pattern post I made, and this one has a pretty cool story. This is actually, look how chunky this thing is. Very similar in construction. You know, it's got just that kind of heavy turning, but just way more bulbous and heavy. So this is going to be for a table that has a thicker rim. You wouldn't want this leg on a table that had a thinner top. This table probably had a 7/8 of an inch thick top with a generous overhang. Looked great. This one, this had a big, thick, it was like a 2 3/4 inch bull nose on it, because this is the leg, this is the pattern leg of one of the original Harkness tables. That's a heavy, bulky leg, had that big, almost 3-inch bull nose and a nice big thick stretcher, but supporting that massive table, it was just, had a lot of integrity and strength to it. So that's a straight turned leg. Now I want to show you a little more formal leg. This is actually when I was working out the template or pattern for a fancy like demi-lune console like table I was going to make. So this is mahogany, and so I had some delicate turnings here. I know this is about 1 3/4 or a little stronger. And then this little bead in here I made black. I was thinking I might somehow get ebony there, but I wanted the foot to be ebony, so I just blackened it. But that's just turned right now as one foot. And so I worked that out, and once I had my pattern leg, then I made the actual leg. Now this is not finished. I actually cut joinery here. I left it a block, and then it fit into the rail. But this is how this thing was made. I pieced it. So I've got a piece of, this is genuine Gaboon ebony. I would drill a hole there, and I just turned a tenon at the end of the leg, and then I had to turn this shape on this ebony block. And then with that turn, using the hole, the pre-drilled hole as the axis. So you put like a, what do they call it? A jam chuck that's a 1/2 inch diameter on your lathe. So it's spinning right on the axis of the hole you drilled. So after you turn that, you know that the turning you create is exactly concentric with the hole that you drilled. So when it fits on, it's perfect. I mean, it's perfectly straight. You know, you might have that concern, like how do you turn that so it's not going off at an angle? Well, that's how. You just turn the tenon while you're spinning this, and then you spin this on the axis of the hole, and everything will line up beautifully. I got a photo of that table. So you can see this is the same leg coming down, and those are real ebony. This is all that Cuban mahogany veneer here with there's ebony lines inlaid at the bottom of the apron and on the top. Now this is just a table, but the first ones I made of this actually were a little deeper. In the center was a drawer, and the top was double layered and would actually open up to reveal a game table. And these back legs would pivot and swing back on knuckle joints. Yeah, so it was an intense table to build. I learned a lot on that, but a sweet formal design. So that's a straight turned leg. Now, so we have like simple and then some higher style. You might have remembered this one I did with David Lamb. If you saw any of the classic woodworking episodes, this butternut, and we made this butternut and walnut table. So here you go. This is the same principle. Now we're upping the game even more. We've got a turned leg, but we're adding carving. So a little more intense, and you can dress up your table and make it even more formal by adding those kind of details, carving, contrasting woods, and things like that. So we're really starting to push the limits there. Here's one. This is an 18th century style. This is another one that I got from Pug's shop. I mean, this is just old stuff, you know. It's been around. It's got stains. It hasn't even been like cut off. Like this was chucked in the lathe, and they would, you know, you'd part it off and cut it off right there, so that would actually be the bottom of it, and then this is the top. So it's a pretty good sized table. Let's see. Yeah, it's 30 inches high. So they probably cut a little down off the block too. Yes, they'd cut it down, and then you'd have the top would be on that. But this has obviously a little more decorative treatment to the leg, and this was very common in the 18th century to put reeding on there, which reeding is just a series of beads and running down the length of the leg. I'm citing it because there's a couple different ways to do the reeding. You can just hand carve them like the old days, or you can use a jig on the lathe or something where you actually use a router bit with a spear point and double like cove cutters, and that will get you going. And by sighting it, if they're true and straight, the groove between them, then you know it was done with a jig. But if they have a little randomness and wave to them, they're hand done. These were done with a jig, but they still look hand done. I mean, it's hard to tell because you've got to still clean them up after that. They don't come out perfectly. But so that's a reeded leg, and this would fall more into the Sheridan period or Sheridan style of 18th century furniture. Now here's some. These are actually Queen Anne. This one, and this big clinker. This again is a pattern. You know, when you see them in poplar like that, they probably weren't the finished thing. But that's the poplar pattern. And these, look how, these are Queen Anne, but notice how straight they are? See how straight that is? These are actually turned Queen Anne legs. So we went right from straight turned legs. Now we've got these turned Queen Anne legs. You say, what do you mean? How could they be turned? Well, they're turned on two axes. So you turn the foot, and then on one axis, I don't know, can you see that little pinhole? But there's a little pinhole there. That's the center axis of the foot. But then there's another little hole in the back heel, that little point on the heel. That's the axis of the column or the leg. So this is spun in two times, one off that center and then one off the other center. And you turn the pad foot, and then you've got to turn the leg. And there's a section down here that you can't really turn, and so you have to file and finish blending by hand. But it ends up saving you some time, and it gives you that Queen Anne leg. So just like I cited the reeds on that leg, when you see a Queen Anne leg, and if you can sight it, usually you can see it from the side. If this section of the leg is dead straight, you know it was turned on a lathe. And so we've got a couple right here. This is more of a regular table height. This is like an end table height. And I've got this one. Again, this is turned. This was for a big like country farm table that I made for somebody. And we did it out of chestnut. So it was awesome. I mean, beautiful color and texture. And this I was just working out. I didn't usually make them this large. This looks kind of fat, you know. But, you know, under the table it was this big round farm table with a big Lazy Susan in the middle. It was a really nice country style table, and this worked really well. Okay, so I just want to give you this little treat of showing you the David Lamb episode table. So the finished one. So this is this leg. And here's the before, you know, and laid it out, and then the carved detail, and this is finished. And that's sweet. I mean, it's just a turned leg, but with that fairly simple carving and that added contrasting walnut foot, you've created this kind of warm, elegant piece that's still not over the top high style. You know, it's still a classy table that would fit in a lot of kind of decors. Let me set this aside. Oh my gosh, I forgot how beat up this was. Here's a Queen Anne table. Now, is that leg turned or sawn? Well, of course, it's actually the same leg I was just showing you. So this is this leg. It's actually made for this style table. It's got these large tenons on the side, and look at these tenons. This is actually how this apron is made. Okay. So check this out. This is how you have to do this. You make this table with a wide apron like this, and this is walnut. And then after you get it all joined, then you trace on here this deep scalloping, and that gets bandsawed and then rasped and filed, and to give it a clean look. It's actually slightly beveled back, like narrower in the back, so that the profile shows up more crisply. That was typical in 18th century on cutouts and chair backs and things. This is not dead square here. It's actually angled so that it looks a little cleaner and more crisp of a shape. So there you have a nice end table, and these legs, an end table like this is usually right around 24. So this would be by a sofa or a chair, you know, typically around 24 inches. So dining table legs, a dining table height is 29 to 30 inches high, and that's a desk as well. So it's a good height. So you have to figure the size of the leg is that different. Now we're getting into a little different style Queen Anne, and this is the Cabriole leg style. This was made popular in the Queen Anne period, where they started to use this nice cyma curve where you have it goes out, convex, and then concave, and comes down and sweeps. So that's the cyma curve. Cabriole, I'm not sure if this is true, but if it's a root or reflected to goat's leg. So I'm not sure if cabriole is that word. I think it is. So you can see how it has that kind of shape. This leg is not true straight, so this was not turned. Only this section got turned. So that's the pad foot, and there is an axis in there, but there's only one because the pad is turned, and then this whole section is sawn out. And it has to be sawn out in 2 dimensions. So on this angle, and then you flip, and you saw it from the other profile, and you end up with this 3-dimensional shape. So here's the pattern for this Queen Anne leg. That's cool. And see on the mark, it's got the mortises marked out. And a lot of times I will cut the mortises first while everything is good and blocky, and then go ahead and turn the foot and bandsaw the rest of it. Then there's a lot of handwork to blend it. So this is one of the pattern legs again, and you can see on this one how I've still got layout lines on this one. And so this was a sharp square corner, But what you do is you make little layout lines to create an octagonal shape where you want it to end up round. So you create, 8 facets. First you start out, you just have the 4 at 90 degrees, and then you chamfer each corner until that facet gets about the same size, and then you just have to knock off these softer and softer facet edges till you have a rounder leg that looks like that. So you blend it and sculpt it, and that's a lot of fun when you're shaping Queen Anne legs and you get them looking kind of more organic or lifelike. So that's a very classic, traditional thing, and I made a lot of those. I mean, think about it, when you make a set of chairs, they're all a bit shorter, but they might be like this. Now this is more fancy, so this would be for a front chair leg or a small stool or something like that. This is also a cabriole leg. You have the shape, but when it's sawn, I don't have the pattern for this. Instead of it being very low here where you'd have the turning, you'd have a larger block of mass of wood there where you would lay out and you lay out a circle on the bottom and use the corners for the toes of the ball and claw, and then you carve in here. This was actually carved by a friend of mine, Clive Hamilton, Jamaican wood carver, great carver. And look, it's still left faceted. It's right off the tool. This became popular after the Queen Anne. They started to decorate the cabriole leg with the influence of the Asian culture having the dragon's claw holding the pearl of great price, or the dragon's claw with its grip on the world. But actually that was a thing. And Thomas Chippendale traveled and got influenced by the Asian culture and incorporated the ball and claw onto the already existent and popular cabriole Queen Anne leg. And then he also incorporated things from nature. So he decided to put leaves and shells and fans, like on furniture. So when you see those pieces that are traditional 18th century, if they have carved elements, ball and claw, shells, leaves, it's from the Chippendale period, which was late 1700s and just into the 1800s. So that's carving. Now this is another Queen Anne leg, but this one was not made on a corner. Like most Queen Anne legs are made on the corner, so the knee comes out on one of the corners. So this at one time was a block just like that. Like this was the back square, and then you had a block here. But the knee is on one of the corners. See, so it's right there. Now this leg is also Queen Anne, but the knee is on one of the flats instead. So it doesn't have as strong a shape. A nice Queen Anne leg, has a soft transition. I don't know what the angle is here. Yeah, it's probably about 30 degrees. So you have these sweet transitions where things flow nicely. Take notice, if you want to build 18th century furniture, that's the way to do it, is look at the best. Don't look in some magazine like where somebody's just trying to do designs, and sell you a design book of stuff and measured drawings. Like, unless they're measured drawings of masterpieces. That's really helpful. Just a couple more here. This is another Queen Anne leg. I love this. I have the other 3 that Pug gave me, actually. He knew he wasn't going to finish it, but this is a walnut leg, and I've got a nice shell carved on the knee. And this is from a Williamsburg collection table, and it's a sweet Queen Anne leg for a tea table. So here's another. This is either a hunt board, for a sideboard, or a dining table, because it's quite tall. I love how nice this carving is. The typical 18th century carving is low relief like that. The really nice stuff, like from the Newport makers in Rhode Island, the Townsends, the Goddard and Townsend pieces. Gorgeous low relief carving, and a lot can be described even though you're not making it stand out so proud. That's 35 to the top, so yeah, they were thinking of this as more of like a sideboard, so you would stand at it, be a higher, almost a server, you know, where you put your china or something like that. I forgot I actually brought tables out to show you some of this stuff. This is the Queen Anne leg that I was showing you earlier, where that is on the corner. So with the Queen Anne leg, you have that nice double tenon into the rails, but then you have to add this little knuckle to complete the flow, and it kind of follows the scalloping along the front. And that's a lot of fun. Like, you got to save, strategically, you save the piece that has the same grain. You might get it off the block up here where you cut away, but you always position it so that it's in the same orientation. So when you glue that piece next to this piece, you want to see the grain flowing so it looks almost seamless. So now we're into a coffee table height, about 16 to 18 inches, roughly. But this leg is sawn out. You see, it's kind of sculptural, but not like any of the others. It's a tapered leg, but it's got curvature to it. And it's also slightly pillowed on the surface. And that is made with a pattern like this. So it's just a simple pattern. Instead of the Cabriole, you've just got a nice taper. So this is pretty much a tapered leg, but with the curvature, it adds a lot of visual interest. And this was just a coffee table design that I enjoyed messing around with, and putting this carved element, the ginkgo leaf, right in the middle, made of rosewood. Had a small piece. Here's another experiment where I've got this pattern, and that creates this leg. That's cool, huh? So that would be another option for the corner of this table. So you got this funky shape like that, and you could shape it and pillow it in. So there's a lot of ways to go. Now, most times you see these table legs, they do get narrower and lighter on the bottom. So just like the one we started with, our straight shot tapered leg table, but here we have this more sculptural, curvy, but again, it's lighter on the bottom. Now, if you were with us for our crazy coffee table project, which is still here, I'm still detailing the top. It's right over here. But we changed the game on that, where we inverted. Instead of it being narrow on the bottom, we wanted to invert that. And we've got a heavier look on the bottom to achieve our reeded look. But it's basically just a tapered, curved leg. And we used a pattern like this to make that leg. And we've got a pair right here that are joined together, if you didn't see that. But you see, you could also make a table where you had it inverted this way. So you take advantage of the curvature, and you get the lighter look at the bottom. And that's a whole nother thing. So, man, you just can do so many things when it comes to your own designs if you want to get off the grid and be sculptural about it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part. I hope this helped and got you interested in period furniture, but also trying your own little hand on taking a spin and an original design.